I find it deeply troubling to witness recurring patterns during counseling sessions. I encounter men who are diligent, capable, have established stable careers, and seemingly lead satisfying lives. Yet they feel the need to apologize merely for existing. They apologize for basic needs like hunger, fatigue, or experiencing emotions. Have you ever found yourself apologizing for just being human? Comment 1 if you've ever said sorry for feeling tired or hungry. Comment 2 if you've never thought about how often you apologize for your own needs. When I ask why they behave this way, the response is consistently, I don't know. I've always been like that, but I believe I do know. After years of working with men raised in environments where love had to be earned, I've uncovered something unsettling. These behaviors aren't personality traits. They are emotional wounds. These hidden scars influence how you give and receive love and explain why you repeatedly choose partners who recreate the emotional dynamics of your early years. If you're always trying to validate your worth, if peaceful love feels unsettling, or if you become anxious when someone shows genuine kindness, then what I'm presenting isn't just a psychological insight. It's a framework that clarifies why your relationships often feel like constant emotional conflicts you can never seem to win. I've realized these patterns aren't accidental or simply odd aspects of your personality. They are outcomes of a particular kind of emotional conditioning. This conditioning started before you could even articulate your feelings and continues to influence your choices in relationships even years later. Here's the core issue in a child raised by narcissistic parents. The nervous system becomes wired for constant emotional survival. This survival programming doesn't stop at adulthood. It becomes your internal system for handling adult life, particularly romantic relationships. Consider this: your emotional compass was set in a hostile environment. Years later, you're attempting to navigate intimacy and love using that same system. But your internal system continues to detect threats that aren't real, expecting betrayals that never arrive, and gearing up for conflicts that aren't occurring. This leads to emotional fatigue that masquerades as constant alertness in romantic relationships. Now, I'll outline 7 patterns I've identified, specific ways this early emotional conditioning shows up in your romantic relationships. As I explain each one, I encourage you to observe whether you relate to them, and more importantly, how your body responds when you do. The first pattern is what I call the compulsive need to constantly explain yourself. This goes beyond just being talkative. It's about feeling incapable of existing without offering justifications for your presence. You tend to send overly detailed messages instead of short replies, feel compelled to justify every opinion, defend every choice, and soften every emotion with an apology in advance. This behavior isn't genuine communication, it's a survival tactic. Your inner child learned that even a basic no could provoke an emotional outburst, and that their needs had to be elaborated on, justified, or pleaded for to be acknowledged. So, you developed a coping mechanism. If I explain enough, justify everything, and make myself seem insignificant, maybe I'll be deemed acceptable. From a neurological standpoint, it's interesting that this pattern affects your capacity to set boundaries. To you, saying no isn't simply a complete response. Instead, it feels like the start of a negotiation where you must validate that your boundary is logical, necessary, and non-threatening. The reality is, When every boundary becomes a debate, you unintentionally signal to others that your right to set limits is open for challenge. This leads us to the second pattern, hypervigilant empathy. You seem to possess an extraordinary skill to detect micro expressions, tone shifts, and subtle body language cues that most people overlook. Even before entering a space, you can sense who is upset, who feels stressed, or who is in need. Though it may appear to be a superpower, it's actually a survival mechanism formed in response to emotionally unstable environments. Your nervous system was conditioned to sense emotional upheaval before it happened. You learned that your parents' moods dictated whether there would be calm or chaos, and you were often blamed for things beyond your control. Does emotional alertness feel like second nature to you? Comment 1. If you're the person who senses tension in the room before anyone says a word. Comment 2. If you're usually unaware of the emotional climate around you. As a result, you built emotional detection systems designed to keep you safe. But from my years of experience, I've observed that living in constant alertness prevents you from ever truly relaxing in intimate relationships. You turn into the partner who foresees needs sidesteps, disagreements, and constantly adjusts to your partner's emotions. It may seem nurturing, but it's actually draining. Real intimacy cannot thrive in an environment where emotional regulation is always on high alert. That takes us to the third pattern, which may be the most painful, your emotional resistance to genuine tenderness. When someone shows you authentic kindness or affection without expecting anything in return, your body doesn't relax. It becomes tense and guarded. You instinctively wonder, what's the catch? What's the cost? What does this person expect from me? This isn't irrational fear. It's trauma intelligence. Your nervous system was conditioned to see affection as a transaction with strings attached. Acts of kindness signaled the start of manipulation. Expressions of love were often followed by emotional debts claimed unexpectedly and with interest. This is why your body reacts to tenderness as a threat, as if it learned that kindness was merely a mask worn by those who meant harm. So even now, when someone genuinely good comes into your life, your internal alarm is triggered, not because they are harmful, but because your body misreads affection as danger. From what I've observed, overcoming this sensitivity to tenderness doesn't come from intellectually convincing yourself that love is safe. It requires your nervous system to relearn the difference between manipulative affection and true care. And that process demands time and, most importantly, self-compassion. Now to the fourth pattern, which I consider especially harmful, the unending performance. Even in solitude, you find yourself acting out some version of a role. You practice dialogues that may never happen, revise texts countless times carefully, tailor your voice and body language, and select every word based on who is listening. This isn't about being deceptive. It's because being your true self feels too risky, as if authenticity is a privilege you don't have. In your formative years, expressing your genuine self came with danger. It meant opening yourself to rejection judgment and the belief that your true nature was unacceptable. So you crafted different personas: the professional version, the social self, the family role, and the romantic identity. Each of these versions is driven by a single underlying question. Who must I become for this person to approve of me? The issue is, when you're always in performance mode, you gradually lose your sense of self beneath the personas. This is essential. Real love isn't an audition. It's not a challenge you must overcome to be deserving of care. It's a meeting between two individuals willing to be authentic, complete with flaws off days and emotional openness. Yet if your entire life has been centered around performing, the thought of being loved as your genuine self might seem not only unrealistic, but frightening. Now, we arrive at the fifth pattern, the quiet but widespread habit of apologizing, not for actual mistakes, but for simply existing. I'm talking about saying sorry for basic human experiences like needing food or rest, holding a different view, expressing emotions, laughing too loudly, or simply existing. I've observed men apologize for things entirely outside their control, like rain. I've seen them apologize for sharing achievements or taking time to understand their own feelings. And every time I witness this, I see a child who was conditioned to believe his presence was a problem, something that always needed defending. What most don't realize is that by continually apologizing for who you are, you signal to others that you believe you have less value. You strengthen the childhood belief that you are inherently inadequate, that your very presence requires justification, and that your needs are excessive. This leads us to the sixth pattern, which may be the most paradoxical and self-defeating: your strong attraction to emotionally distant individuals. Though it might appear self-punishing, it's not masochism, it's familiarity. Your nervous system recognizes and feels at home in this emotional environment. The persistent drive to win love, the endless effort to be worthy, the constant doubt about your value. These are all familiar states. From a neuroscience perspective, what's occurring is striking your brain has been trained to equate love with labor, fear with excitement, and conquest with validation. When love is offered freely and calmly, your nervous system misinterprets it not as love, but as boredom, or a sign that something is off, as if it's unreal. It's as though your heart only understands one particular version of love, one built on scarcity striving and endless validation. So, when love is expressed in terms of abundance and ease without strings attached, you fail to recognize it as love at all. This is why you find yourself in relationships where your existence feels conditional, where love is rationed, and you're constantly striving to prove your worth. Do you find calm relationships unsettling? Comment 1. If peaceful love feels unfamiliar or even suspicious. Comment 2 if you naturally feel safe when love is steady and drama-free. This cycle persists because deep down, you're still trying to finally secure the love you were denied, seeking proof that you are at last worthy of being loved. But here's what I've come to understand. The only way to disrupt this pattern is through something that feels completely opposite to everything you've ever known. You must learn to accept love that flows naturally. Your nervous system needs to be trained to understand that emotional openness is not the same as dullness, but rather a sign of safety. Love that doesn't demand struggle is not worth less. It is more authentic, profound, and real. This leads to the seventh and last pattern, one that is profoundly touching your deep fear of turning into the very person who harmed you. You are constantly anxious about seeming arrogant, causing pain, or displaying traits that resemble the narcissism that shaped your past. This fear is so overwhelming that it drives you to minimize yourself. You shy away from recognition, downplay your successes, reject compliments, and escape situations where you could be viewed as exceptional. Deep inside, you hold the belief that being noticed is unsafe, that it could make you resemble the harmful parent who raised you. Yet here lies a striking irony. Those truly afraid of being narcissistic almost never are. The very presence of this fear in your thoughts is evidence of your empathy, self-awareness, and capacity to feel alongside others. Real narcissists never question their behavior. They don't stay awake wondering if they've caused harm, nor do they practice such intense self-reflection or emotional accountability. Ironically, your fear of becoming like them is your strongest safeguard against it. This fear ties you to your humanity, your sensitivity, and your deep longing not to replicate the pain once inflicted on you. However, when the fear grows so strong that it paralyzes you, suppresses your light, and renders you unseen, it becomes a prison of its own. At the core of this message is this truth. Recognizing these patterns does not mean branding yourself as damaged or flawed. Instead, it is about empowering yourself to make new choices and equipping yourself with the understanding of why you react, choose, and feel the way you do. These 7 patterns are not defects in your personality. Rather, they are intelligent adaptations. Your mind devised to survive in a setting where love was conditional, where your value was tied to your ability to keep others content. You grew up among people incapable of finding happiness within themselves. As a child, you did the best you could with the tools available, and those tools saved you. They helped you endure a home where emotional survival required constant alertness, where love was earned, and where authenticity was a privilege you couldn't afford. Now, as an adult, the very tools that once kept you safe have become obstacles to living freely. The hypervigilance that once ensured protection has turned into relational anxiety. The endless explanations that once served as defense have morphed into difficulty setting boundaries. The performances that once won acceptance now stand as barriers to genuine intimacy. After decades of experience, I've realized this healing does not mean instantly erasing all these patterns. Healing is about noticing them as they arise, responding with kindness and patience, and gradually choosing new ways of reacting. It involves turning former survival mechanisms into instruments for growth, creating genuine relationships where your existence doesn't require justification, forming authentic connections where you are seen without pretenses, cultivating love that doesn't need to be earned but is given freely for who you are, not for your performance. And I want you to understand this. Recognizing these patterns does not condemn you to live them out forever. You are not broken. You are not beyond love. You are someone who endured experiences no one should have had to face. Now, you have the opportunity to choose something different. Because mature love does exist. It is not the love that requires endless justification. It is not the love that must be guarded constantly out of fear of losing it. It is not the love that demands you hide your true self. It is not the love that forces you to apologize simply for existing. Mature love is the kind that notices you even on your worst days without demanding explanations. It is the love that acknowledges your fear and responds not with answers, but with presence. It is the love that lets you be authentic, imperfect, and fully human. This love is not threatened by your boundaries, but respects them. It does not punish you for your wounds, but remains with you as you heal. And this love is waiting for you, not as a prize for perfect healing, because healing is not a final destination. Healing is a continuous process, a daily commitment to yourself, a deliberate choice to act differently when old patterns resurface. Healing is the moment when you want to over-explain, but instead take a deep breath and trust that saying no is sufficient. It happens when your body stiffens at a loving gesture, but you intentionally remain present, letting yourself receive that tenderness, even if it feels unfamiliar. It's when you catch yourself falling into a role, but instead you reveal part of your true self, even if your voice shakes. It's when you stop an apology from leaving your lips and instead say, "I need this," without justification. It's when you feel attracted to someone emotionally distant, but deliberately choose to walk away, moving towards someone genuinely present, even if your nervous system resists because it doesn't yet recognize this form of love. And when the fear emerges that you might turn into the one who hurt you, you don't diminish yourself. Instead, you see that fear as evidence of your empathy and choose to shine, understanding that your light doesn't diminish others, it encourages them to shine with you. Every one of these choices is an act of immense bravery as you are opting for the unknown instead of the familiar, healing instead of mere survival, growth instead of repetition. You are creating a new story with an ending your inner child never thought possible. Your experience with narcissistic parents taught you survival skills in a hostile environment. But now, you have the chance to learn something different: how to thrive in love, how to create relationships built on mutual respect, authenticity, and the beautiful imperfection of two people committed to growing together. And I want you to understand that this is not only possible for you, it is your right. You deserve to be loved without conditions. You have the right to exist unapologetically. You have the right to establish boundaries without constant justification. You have the right to be seen, known, and valued exactly as you are. The love you seek not only exists, it is also seeking you. But to recognize it and allow it to remain, you must do something that may feel like the most difficult task in the world. You must start treating yourself with the same gentleness you extend to others. You must begin speaking to yourself as you would to your dearest friend, someone who has gone through the same hardships you have. You need to begin defending yourself with the same strength you would use to protect a loved one. You must start seeing yourself through compassionate eyes, the same way you view others who have endured similar pain. For the greatest truth I've discovered is this: you cannot accept love if you don't believe you deserve it. You cannot form healthy relationships while still entangled in a toxic relationship with yourself. You cannot offer to others what you continue to withhold from yourself. That is why healing must always begin with you. Not with finding someone to mend your wounds, not with explaining your needs more clearly, nor with behaving in a way that convinces others to accept you. Healing starts with realizing that you deserve love simply for existing. Your worth is not something to be bargained over. You do not need to earn your place in this world. Just as you are with all your wounds, patterns, and history, you are enough. From this foundation of deep self-acceptance and genuine self-love, you can start choosing relationships that honor your true self rather than those that force you to become someone you are not. The journey toward mature love is not flawless. Some days, old patterns will echo more strongly than ever. There will be times when the familiar rhythm of survival feels more secure than the unfamiliar tune of healing. And that's all right. That is part of the process. What matters most is that you now hold the keys. You now carry the map. You now understand that the patterns that have followed you all your life are not your fate. They are your beginning point. From here, you can choose something different, something better, something worthy of the man you have become, despite it all. And this man, the one who survived, who grew, who chose healing instead of repetition, deserves a love that celebrates him, not one that merely endures him. He deserves a love that truly sees him, not one that ignores him. A love that walks beside him, not one that keeps him small. That love is real, and you just as you are in this very moment are worthy of receiving it. How do you define the kind of love you deserve? Comment 1. If you're still learning how to believe you deserve unconditional love. Comment 2 if you've already started choosing relationships that honor your true self.